Lunalights are an interesting archetype because they are one of those anime decks that seem to gain popularity because of the visibility, but were later summarily dismissed, at least from what I can see, due to the individuals believing that the deck is just not good. This is unfortunate, for Lunalights are one of those decks that takes getting a feel for, and most people tend not to run the deck long enough to get that important experience that increases winning probability. Also, the anime portrayal of this deck seems to do it a disservice, in that it sells the deck strategy as heavy and almost rapid OTK. While the deck has significant OTK potential, the problem that I can see both in theory and in my experience is that Lunalights are better served by being a 1/3 to 1/2 deck, i.e. a deck that lops off like 2,500 to 4,000 life points per turn, versus a deck that attempts to take all 8,000 in a single slice. With this viewpoint in mind, what does my Lunalight deck look like? As a newer archetype, there is not an overwhelming amount of support, but enough of it, so going over all of the direct support is within time constraints and appropriate. Overall, these monsters do deserve a review because most are rather useful. Lunalight Wolf is a rather interesting card because its general synergy with the deck is somewhat lacking, and its monster effect is far too situational to be depended on, but its pendulum effect is too good to dismiss, and it is a Lunalight monster, which are still in short enough supply that the name alone is useful. Wolf's pendulum effect is basically a miracle fusion, and one of the best means of getting either Panther or Leo Dancer on the field by using a graveyard or even on-field secondary Dancer as a base instead of having to hopefully fish out that second or third Polymerization or use some card like a Fusion Recovery. However, as mentioned earlier, do not really count on Wolf to do anything else relevant beyond its pendulum effect, for even the usefulness associated with the pendulum summoning of Lunalights is so hit or miss that it's really not valuable because only Blue Cat really cares about being special summoned, and needing to get multiple Lunalights from the hand to the field to utilize for Wolf's effect is not consistent or useful enough for it to be advantageous. It's just kind of a side benefit. Despite the inconsistent potential of this card, its pendulum effect is good enough to run it at least 2 copies, and because Twin Twister exists, I run it 3, despite a small level of inefficiency. For being a pendulum monster, it rarely hits the graveyard. Thus, if you want to get it back in your hand so you can put it in the pendulum zone, you're pretty much reliant on the fusion effect of Sheep. Crimson Fox is OCG only right now, but it is certainly worth a couple of deck spots when it comes out due to its respectable attack and its attack lowering effect, largely when involved in fusion summoning. Blue Cat is certainly important overall to Lunalight victory. The attack doubling effect is incredibly nasty when targeting a Lunalight fusion monster, and typically required to produce those OTKs. The trick, of course, is the special summons. Putting monsters like Tin Goldfish or Marauding Captain to increase the probability of activation have a tendency to reduce the overall effectiveness of the deck, and there really is no real reason to do it anyways. Blue Cat has its own means of triggering its attack doubling effect, Cat's Field Destruction effect. While this effect is rather useful in allowing Lunalights to produce a significant level of field control, especially in combination with Tiger, which produces a soft loop of sorts, it can also trigger its own effect by summoning another copy of itself from the deck, for its effect does not disallow summoning another Blue Cat, nor does it negate the effect of the summoned monster. Thus, put a Lunalight fusion on the field, then get a Blue Cat that can attack, suicide it into an opponent's monster, summon another copy of Blue Cat, target the Lunalight fusion for massive damage, or even an OTK. Also, Cat can get Wolf on the field as well if your opponent has tried to put up some form of defensive wall to stop your multi-monster attack push. Other common means to special summon Cat is through the effects of Rabbit and Butterfly. 3 copies of Blue Cat are pretty much a must. Tiger definitely has more quality play consistency than Wolf, for its pendulum effect at worst produces an extra material for fusion summoning, and nets some nice versatility search advantage by summoning Blue Cat, or make some big combo plays later depending exactly on what's on your field and in your hand. Its monster effect is a good way of getting Blue Cat on the field or another appropriate monster for advantage like Black Sheep right before the fusion play to net another card from the graveyard. Note that Tiger says Lunalight monster, so it can grab a properly summoned fusion Lunalight as well, and similar to Plushfire, when it is destroyed as a Pendulum monster, it receives its monster effect. 3 copies. At the moment, Purple Butterfly is a mediocre card that serves almost little to no real purpose. Some may look at the 1000 attack increase as valuable to OTKing, but rarely will the 1000 attack be sufficient enough to create an OTK. However, that is all it really can do. The graveyard effect is only valuable when in combination with Blue Cat, for no other Lunalight monster currently receives any type of effect for being special summoned. The deck is also a little shaky when it comes to XZ summoning due to extra deck space, especially in this build, and such a special summons has little value in a fusion-centric deck, especially when it's a 1-for-1 trade-off for Wolf's effect. However, due to the lack of Fox, I do run 1 copy of Butterfly. White Rabbit is a fantastic card. Not only does it produce multiple fusion materials via its graveyard revival effect, the fact that the revived card maintains its effect is also quite helpful for allowing Blue Cat triggering and the ability to double up on Sheep's effect, discard Sheep for Polymerization, normal summon Rabbit, special summon Sheep with Rabbit's effect, and then use that Polymerization you initially got off Sheep to send both Rabbit and Sheep to the graveyard for your fusion, and then use Sheep's effect to add Rabbit back to your hand. That effect would be good enough, but add in an opponent-only back row bounce effect to clear the road of Mirror Force variant obstacles, and White Rabbit is definitely a card worthy of 3 spots. Again, similar to Tiger, Rabbit can grab a properly summoned fusion monster as well. Black Sheep is another excellent support card. Its versatility alone is useful for the player. Can grab a Polymerization or another Lunalight monster from the graveyard by simply discarding it, where it can be special summoned back to the field by Rabbit or Tiger. If that were not enough, Sheep can also grab one of its fusion partners or another Lunalight monster face up in the extra deck or graveyard after participating in a fusion summons and going to the graveyard. 3 copies. While it may be surprising to some, I only run 1 Leo Dancer, because while Leo is definitely a beast, it is not an end-all monster. Most of the time, Panther or Cat is enough to get the job done over either 1 turn or multiple turns. Realistically, if I had extra space in the extra deck, for more Leo Dancers I would run more, but I like using the space for other things, and in my experience, multiple Leo Dancers never really seem to be a consistently significant enough issue for me to run that second one. Panther Dancer is another solid card, and thanks to all of the graveyard recursion for this deck making it somewhat easy to return a graveyard-bound Cat Dancer back to the field, summoning Panther is rather easy. The anti-card destruction effect was better in the past, but still is nothing to sneeze at. The nice advantage for Panther over Cat is it can produce the double attack on each monster effect on its own, without having to tribute a Lunalight monster. While the attack gain is a rather peculiar effect, it does have its moments. 2 copies. Cat Dancer is the most common fusion summons for the deck due to its incredibly generic summoning condition of 2 Lunalight monsters. Unfortunately, Cat Dancer's 2400 attack limits its overall killing ability, typically demanding an attack augmentation to really finish the duel or get over a number of monsters that your opponent may be fielding. Fortunately, as mentioned earlier, there are numerous ways to accomplish this feat. In my opinion, getting Cat Dancer on the field as fast as possible is important due to the graveyard recursion ability of the deck as a whole and its ability to act as a stopgap due to its anti-battle destruction effect. Cat Dancer can actually be rather annoying for the opponent to get over, because it cannot be destroyed as a result of battle, so they have to use card effects, but you can bring it back to the field so easily. I run 2 Cat Dancer, again because extra deck space consideration. Perfume is currently an OCG only card, but similar to Crimson Fox, it is definitely worth a couple of spots when it comes out, thanks to its archetype-specific Monster Reborn ability, as well as its deck searching effect. For me, Reincarnation Dance is one of those cards that produces mixed feelings. First, it's an excellent card, creating an inherent and high-quality +1. However, it is an unchainable trap, and Lunalights do not have a fusion monster that specifically requires a main deck monster by name. It just requires Lunalights or one of the fusions as the base. Thus, the search is not significantly meaningful relative to the overall fusion capacity. This card seems to promote OTKing, as individual Lunalight monsters are nothing special. They need a combo with each other. Overall, in my opinion, this is one of those cards that you either run at 3 or 0 because you need to see it, because if you see it too late, it's basically worthless. And for me, it just does not seem to have a good feel for my deck design, which is kind of weird to say about a card that nets you a +1, but that's how it is. My time play testing it just didn't seem like it fit well with the deck build that I run. So, with the Lunalight cards finished, what other cards work well with this deck? First, one could hybridize Lunalights with either Metaphosis or Odd Eyes and Sky Iris to attempt to combine their destruction effects with Blue Cat and Tiger for bigger advantage plays. As far as I can tell in my limited experience, the Metaphosis hybridization does not work well, for both elements, Lunalight and Metaphosis, demand too much from the deck to run effectively. If you create the efficiency properly, you're sitting there running like a 45-46 card deck, at least in my experience. The Odd Eye Sky Iris combo with Lunalights could materialize into something viable, but it does run into some consistency issues. For this build, I forego both of these possibilities and go a different way with a little more synergistic hodgepodge. So, what are the other monsters I run in the deck? First, due to the importance of attack augmentation for this deck, I run a card that, while good, just for some reason doesn't seem to make the cut in a lot of decks. Juragedo. Juragedo is a nice card with a decent 1700 attack point monster. It has an innate special summoning ability that's ridiculously easy to activate, increases life points by 1000 when it special summons itself, and can increase the attack of any monster by 1000 if it's allowable. The special summoning ability is especially nice for the way I run this deck, and it'll launch some sneak attacks against an unsuspecting opponent. 2 copies. For the rest of the monsters, I like adding some synchro action to the deck for versatility purposes, so they're tuners. 1 copy of Gloat Bulb, which actually combos nicely with Cat Dancer, being a level 7 to make easy rank 8 or even rank 9 synchros. I'm not a huge fan of this next card in principle, but I find it works very nicely in this deck, and realistically probably should be a staple no matter what type of build you prefer. 1 copy of Genex ally Birdman. Birdman is a nice card for this deck because of Tiger's recursion ability. Summon a sheep via Tiger, then return it to your hand with Birdman for more versatility. Grab a graveyard Lunalight or a Polymerization. Summon a rabbit, return it with Birdman. Sets you up to normal summon that rabbit to get another graveyard summons as well as the bounce effect, in addition to a potentially quality synchro because of Birdman's tuner ability. The ability to reactivate the effects of a Tiger summoned monster via Birdman is definitely useful. In addition, its special summon effect and it being a tuner are obviously helpful. Closing out the monsters, I run 1 copy of Red Resonator as another means to special summon Blue Cat or set up higher level synchro plays, in addition to producing combo potential with a specific synchro. One could also run Junk Synchron here, but I seem to get more mileage out of Red Resonator, both due to the life point gain effect and its ability to special summon an effect active Blue Cat. I will note that another interesting option for this deck, for I guess maybe more high risk, high reward players, is Ghost Charon, the Underworld Boatman. For level 7, level 8 fusions are very common in this deck. Thus, Charon can be used to put level 9 and level 10 Dragon Synchros on the field. Charon is also a level 2 tuner as well, if you want to go the traditional synchro route. The major problem, though, I find with Charon is that its only dragon summoning condition on the turn it uses its effect can be incredibly annoying, and can limit your playmaking potential. For the spells, I side Regeki, and I don't run Soul Charge for obvious reasons. There's enough inherent recursion in this deck, and Soul Charge you can't have your battle phase is obviously debilitating to the deck. I do run the unsurprising 3 copies of Polymerization. Running 2 poly and 1 fusion substitute is also a possibility, but I find that drawing fusion substitute early can really hurt the deck, and due to my frequent use of Wolf's effect, the graveyard effect of substitute is less helpful than it might be for other fusion decks. The possibility to return a destroyed Leo is interesting, so you can reuse him, especially because I only run 1 copy, but more than likely, if Leo leaves the field, it will be either banished, spun, or bounced, so it probably won't be in the graveyard anyways. With a vast majority of the deck comprised of Beast Warrior monsters, not surprisingly, I run 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. For draw power, I run 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. Remember, I really don't look for that flash OTK most of the time in this deck, so the extra 1,000 life points is not a huge deal. And 1 copy of One Day of Peace, because it's me, that's kind of one of my personal staples. I've explained why in the past. And while this deck can float, thanks to Blue Cat and Tiger, it's not great at floating at certain times. Unless you got Tiger or Blue Cat on the field, this deck sinks like a stone. Fusion plays are further supported by running 1 copy of Fusion Tag and 1 copy of Fusion Recovery. I only run 1 copy of each for, again, I don't run this deck as a kind of OTK hungry deck, and I prefer to avoid the potential bad draws associated with running more copies of this card, because in your opening hand, if you draw multiple Fusion Tags or multiple Fusion Recoveries, it's going to be tough. Also, I find neither one of these cards is that important in this deck because of Wolf's Miracle Fusion-like effect. If Wolf did not exist, then running multiples would be advisable, but he does. Also, I run 1 copy of Foolish Burial to set up Wolf fusions, getting Glow Up Bulb in the grave, or setting up combo plays between a sent Lunalight monster and either Rabbit or Tiger. One spell card I think should be a staple in this deck, but is probably rare because I think a lot of people forget about it, is Creature Swap. For a deck that, in a sense, makes its bread by beating up on monsters as much as possible, and has significant self-recursion, it makes sense to run a card that involves swapping an opponent's monster, whatever it may be, for one of your attack position sheep or rabbits, to really pile up the damage. Notwithstanding the specific abilities of Lunalights, Creature Swap is generally a useful card anyways, frequently bailing one's butt out of the fire now and again, and frustrating the opponent many more times than that. Finally, I run 2 copies of an old side deck card in Book of Eclipse. Eclipse is another nice card at somewhat indirectly increasing high damage potential, as well as stuffing an opponent's big play due to its targetless non-destruction aspect, and the ability to put all monsters into defense position. The draw associated with it is typically not a big deal for this deck, because it occurs during the end phase, and the idea behind this card's use is to either stop a hugely detrimental play that is more damaging than the resultant draw, or ending the duel before those cards can be played. Eclipse can also break domain locks and other potential forms of monster negation. Furthermore, Eclipse actually makes Wolf's piercing effect actively useful by putting your opponent's monsters in defense mode versus passively useful by just hoping your opponent puts monsters in defense mode. Most decks running monsters have lower defense than attack. Wolf plus a fusion Lunalight significantly increases damage potential and OTKs. However, this choice can definitely be viewed as somewhat unconventional, so I understand other players going with more conventional choices here like Solemn Warning, Solemn Strike, and or Bottomless Trap Hole. Note that I side Mystic Space Typhoons over Twin Twisters for back row heavy decks because, in my experience, thanks to Rabbit, this deck does not really need the overall power of Twister most of the time, and can have trouble from time to time effectively supporting the discard outside of that discard being used as feeder for Wolf's effect. For the traps, I run the 3 copies of Drowning Mirror Force, and 1 copy of the, in my opinion, why is this card still unbanned, Vanity's Emptiness. For the extra deck, in addition to Lunalight Fusions, I run a mixture of Synchro and XZs, 1 Leo Keeper of the Sacred Tree. I've said it before, I'll say it again right here, this guy is still pretty solid. 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. I love this card in this deck because special summon a Cat Dancer either via poly or numerous graveyard recursion effects, normal summon the Glow Up Bulb, make a Scarlight, blow up the field, then Glow Up Bulb graveyard effect, summon Abyss. 1 Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, 1 Scarlight, Red Dragon Archfiend, 1 PSY-Framelord Omega. Really, any level 8 is suitable here. I like Omega to get back monsters banished by Wolf's effect, in addition to its annoy your opponent by taking a random card out of their hand effect. 1 Black Rose Dragon, very nice in this deck. Blow up your opponent's field, and if you have a Tiger and or a Blue Cat on the field, you net their effects. You can maintain some level of field presence and maybe get in a couple shots on their life points. 1 Abyss Dweller. I think Abyss Dweller is a better choice over Castel for this particular archetype. 1 number S39 Utopia the Lightning. 1 number 39 Utopia. And 1 Sky Cavalry Centuria. One of the big problems with Lunalights, as I stated in the intro, is that while they have the capacity to OTK, in my eyes they don't move and feel as a natural OTK deck, solely because they have certain requirements that cannot be so easily met. Most notably, your opponent has to have either very weak monster or multiple monsters that you can successfully attack. Or even defense position monsters with Wolf on the field as a monster, but those are very rare situations. Compare this requirement in contrast to a deck like Mermails and Fluffles that don't really care what's on the field for them to go into OTK mode, and the difference in efficiency is rather clear. However, in my opinion, Lunalights are actually a solid deck that can effectively compete against the meta thanks to their nice combinations when not focusing on an OTK or bust strategy, and piloted by an experienced player who knows what they're doing with the deck. Well, that's my Lunalight deck. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.